This is Daybreak. Thanks for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Dr. Alphonse Kanga is the regional chair, the National Council of the Churches of Kenya, Nairobi. Dr. Lukoya Tuoli is the Dean of Medical College, East Africa at the Aga Khan University. Steve Ogola is an advocate of the High Court, and Sheikh Ibrahim Lithome is a Muslim scholar. Thanks for staying with us, gentlemen. Steve, now on the moral maturity. In the battles that we have talked about of the values and the virtues, and recently we have seen the pushing of the blame towards parents and their abject failure in the instilling of values in children. That doesn't mean the government loses its responsibility, is it, in safeguarding people's lives and property?
I don't understand the context in which that obligation was expressed to the parents, because parents already performed this duty, granted. But this is what we say from the rule of law perspective, that individuals may do everything except that which is expressly prohibited by the law. Government may do nothing except that which is expressly permitted by the law.
Absolutely.
So the individuals have broader latitude. The government must justify its actions as having been founded in the law. The question on the moral and ethical questions that we are debating now, I think provokes this kind of reaction. I've asked myself, do we as Kenyans have a shared and settled understanding of what constitutes our identity, our moral and value system? We don't. And how do we inculcate, how do we build that moral fabric that can make us distinctively Kenyan and not Ugandans and Tanzanians, for instance, or maybe Americans? The Constitution at Article 10 has attempted to tease out. It has not given us a comprehensive list. It has provided what we may consider as broad strokes of what should constitute our national values. It talks about the rule of law, which I've just explained what it means. It talks about human dignity, social justice, integrity, accountability. Now, the whole cocktail of the national values bind both the state and the individual. In terms of horizontal application, it means I have to pay attention to the consequences, the unintended consequences, Ayub, of my actions and utterances against Prof. That is the horizontal relationship. When we're expressing ourselves and when we're building a shared understanding of what may constitute a value system. In terms of vertical arrangement, government must pay attention to the fact that citizens enjoy greater liberties, and they are, by design of law, heavily constrained on their response. So how do you create a balance? I would draw from the words of Cicero, who said that true law is right reason in agreement with nature. If you want to know what is right and wrong, appeal to your inner sense. And I think the church and the mosques, our religious leaders, do a great job in terms of building a shared and settled understanding of what constitutes a good Muslim. And the Christians the church tells us, what is it that constitutes a good Christian? So you have the Christian doctrinal teachings, what you can and what you cannot do. And our religious leaders also, the Muslims also, our sheikhs tell us, this is how to be a good Muslim. You know, so there's need for inner reflection. So if you project that conversation from the personal space to the outside or public space, the way to balance it, as I see it, Ayub, you need to pay attention to the intrinsic gravity of your action, as opposed to the context in which you operate. The reflection on the gravity of your action will tell you, for instance, as an individual, is it right to kill another? And you'll tell yourself, no, it's not right, because good sense of judgment, Christian or Islamic doctrinal teaching will tell you, no, don't kill. So then there's pervasive understanding that we should not be killing each other. Okay. Then you would not go out there and kill, and the government does not have to come for you. On the other side, also as government, you have to ask yourself, as an institution, as a corporate entity, what is it that is intrinsically right? And you can take the signal from the Constitution. I've said one of the value system is deepening our commitment, the rule of law, which means we can say everything except that is what is expressly prohibited. Yeah. So which means government must attempt as much as possible to expand the liberties that people enjoy, unless the circumstances so demand. Yeah. In the context of these missing persons, it is difficult to say with absolute certainty that these people were abducted by security agencies. It could also be, Ayub, that political actors and other people with nefarious intentions have already infiltrated the system and are also taking advantage of the political activity of this youth. But you see now where the problem falls is that we are now left to speculate broadly, the kind of broad speculation that would be unnecessary if there was timeous communication.
And is the cause of that speculation then prompted by the inability by, for example, the IG, Douglas Kanja, who we spoke to towards the end of December, that he says police are not aware of these abductions? That vacuum is...
Yes, I was
is
in
it
that...
not an indictment on our government as well?
Yeah. No, it's an indictment because what you ought to have said and what we expect is that, look, no one is saying, Aguendo, that police have abducted these people. That is speculation on the street, Ayub. Because what is on the record is that they were reported as missing persons. But I think what the National Police Service is not understanding is that demonstrating interventions taken so far. Because they said, if you look at the context in which the people went missing, it is possible to arrive at a conclusion that they went missing or they were allegedly abducted because of their political activity or fierce criticism of government. Because that perception is deep. It makes no sense to challenge it. What makes sense is to then move quickly and provide a timeless update. You saw the attacks in New Orleans, and I've been following the investigation of what has been characterized as a terror attack. Every day, the security agencies are providing updates, and this is helping to manage expectations. Because communication is important, and Sheikh talked about the right to access to information under Article 35 of the Constitution. Okay. You know Kenyans will demand answers. You preempt. You provide those answers, timeless updates. Then we can then build an understanding that, look, there is shared effort in establishing the whereabouts. If you know and that these guys are not in police custody and they're not communicating, you leave it to the people to speculate, and the limits of speculation is unimaginable.
Okay. Dr. Lukoya, I'll come to you briefly. Sheikh Ibrahim. Yeah. When we look at accountability on the part of those holding offices, I mean, governments do exist in perpetuity. Yeah. There's the aspect of how our finances are managed, the language of the political class itself. And the common denominator in all this is dishonesty and duplicity. Do they have then the moral authority when their language, as you have mentioned in the example that you have given, is why, for example, your kid had consumed what that political leader had said? Yes? I mean, there must be certain ways, as Steve had mentioned, need to mitigate how then to bring up kids who will, of course, be members of the society. But are they also controlling themselves as to what they say, how they say, and where they say?
Yeah. Now, talking now as a religious leader, I think people need to take responsibility of their actions and whatever they say. And allow me to quote from my teachings, and the lawyer here has said that there are certain expectations of what a good Muslim should be, a good Christian should be. Let's begin from taking responsibility for your words and actions. The teachings from the Prophet, peace be upon him, is that if you really believe in God Almighty, and all of us believe in God Almighty, and know that a day will come when you'll be answerable for all your actions, sitting there as a journalist, as a religious leader, as a medic, as a lawyer, and myself here, then you either say what is right or shut up. sorry, I'm using that word to show how strong it is. You keep quiet. Before you say anything, ask yourself here, whatever I'm saying, what are the consequences of what I'm saying? Before I take any action, and again, depending on your position in society, because the weight of what you say and what you do increases with the position that you have. Again, and I'm not mentioning names here because we're here to discuss issues, not personalities, but unfortunately, people might want to put a name to what I'm going to say. It is not lost to us. Maybe by then you are very young yourself, but the rest of us, I think we are old enough to remember this. This is our time to eat the meat.
Yeah.
You can salivate. That is not lost to Kenyans. Now, as a leader, when I say that, I should ask myself, what are the consequences of such a statement here? Okay? So I think we need to remind people. And I see them, Dr. Atwoli here is talking about men, but I will say about men and women. When they take positions of responsibilities, never mind how they get there, because some of them, it's not because they're very qualified to be there, but it's because of who they clap for, and their second name, and many other considerations. If it's a Christian, they will lift the Bible. If it's a Muslim, they will lift the Quran and swear before God. I want to ask myself, do they take it seriously, that oath of office that they take before God, man and God, including the head of state himself, in public, before man and God, they swear. I want to remind them, when you take that holy book that you believe in, Neno limesema, if you're a Christian, Qurani imesema, if you're a Muslim, it means you're telling God, I will be responsible for whatever I say. I'll make sure whatever I say or do is not going to harm the people that have given me this responsibility. So we want to appeal to them. If you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, when you take up that book and swear, are we taking that oath seriously? And again, I want to remind them. And Dr. Atwoli said there's something that many people don't like talking about. Each one of us has a date of expiry.
Yeah.
And we believe as Christians and Muslims, you're going there to be answered. It's not the end, it's the beginning of something else, and you'll be answerable for all your deeds. I want to remind all of them, and they should learn from history. Those who are there before them, where are they? They are before their maker. And I want to tell them, as a religious leader, they are being answerable for every act, everything they said in this world. So I want to appeal to them. Can we go back to the teachings of our Lord, and can we be sincere to them and stop giving religion lip service?
Okay. Dr. Kanga, in a country where the political class turns God on and off at will, when it suits them, do they have how do they address the double effects of failing on the oath of office they take in the mismanagement of our resources, leading the people in an equal and fair manner, and now telling the institution of parenting that you are failing us, yet they are a key cog in the architecture of our society?
I want to begin from where you have just left, the institution of parenting, and begin by saying, I had a statement on parenting, but I didn't know in what context. But the issue is, parenting, we learn parenting by parenting, number one. And then there is something we call common sense parenting. Common sense parenting begins when somebody is 5 to 8 years. Between 1 and 7 years, you are doing common sense parenting. And that is, you are trying to cultivate in somebody availability, respect, sharing of resources, and responsibility. And that comes from common sense parenting, where you just say, please sit down, say thank you. Oh, that's not yours. Can you share that bread you have? Then develops upwards. The rest, we are talking about common sense parenting. I think we are talking about lecturing individuals at a particular level. That one is, we need to, it might not do much to an individual. So you have to begin with common sense parenting, which begins from home. And that one, all of us got it. But when we come here again, I go back to the foundations. The foundations where we started this. How do we come to an area where you claim to be a particular religious person following the teaching of Jesus, following the teaching of Jesus Christ, and then you follow them on Sunday, and on Monday you are doing something else? It happens based on how your mindset, how you are wired, how your mindset is. The preacher can preach and preach and preach and preach and tell you all you can. But the question is, how have you been wired from down there? What is the foundation? What are some of the foundational beliefs? And again, the foundational beliefs is as simple as this. The value system you have is just as simple as this. Do you know this is your brother? Do you know this is your sister? Do you know Kenya belongs to all of us? Or it is you, I, and myself? Back again to the illustration. Do you know this issue of nyama imechinjwa, leta kisu? So who is supposed to come with kisu? It should be my brother. And who gets the bigger part is that one who is a hero. And whether you have come with strength and power and you get the all of the meat, then you become a hero. That becomes a problem.
Yeah. But Dr. Alphonse, the Constitution provides for, given our ethnic makeup, prescribes how the national cake is shared. And this based on the previous, of course, regimes that we had since independence, which systematically locked out some regions out of the country, therefore devolution informed why there should be equal development across the country. That is sorted. I mean, you are largely pointing out the case of socialism in the case of Tanzania and capitalism in the case of Kenya. But who then bears the responsibility? Isn't it those then in power at any given time who in this case then lack the serious thinking?
Yes, it is those in power and it's those who elect those people in power. It is again, yes, it is written, as he says, it's on paper. How do you practice them? We practice them by the foundation of what's in our mind. And our mind is, how do you plan projects? We plan projects with the idea, what is mine in? Let's look at the value system on what's on the ground right now, the CBC. We are talking of CBC 9 months. We are preparing, 5 years we have been preparing for grade 9. Right now we are saying some classrooms are ready, some classrooms are not ready, and we are saying if your classroom is not ready, then use what you have. Meaning the schools around in my back here, they are for the computers. They have the computer and they have the cleaning material. But now the school somewhere in Shititswi or Muihoko down there, they don't even know what a broom is. They are using leaves. And this one is, so that one is using what they have. What they have are leaves. And what you have here are vacuum cleaner. So look at the vacuum cleaner and the person using leaves. But what happened? 5 years in our value system, in our mind, in our planning, in sharing resources, we are planning for CBC. Where are we? The value system has affected. Why? Because if I'm here, then my people are okay. But them, they are not okay.
Okay. As versus them.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Lokwe, you had a point earlier.
Yeah, there are a few things that I think we need to be clear. And I'll begin by saying the law and the Constitution and all these policies, they're written for conmen and criminals. They're not written for the average citizen. They're written to control the conmen and the criminals. So this is why Wakili said people or the citizens may do anything except that which is expressly prohibited by law. But those that we put in positions of responsibility can only do that which is provided for by law. So it's a potent, powerful point in the sense that when an average citizen does something, they're doing what they're allowed to do, except if it is expressly prohibited by law. When a person in a position of responsibility does something, they're under huge scrutiny, because they can only do that which they are permitted to do by law. They do not have the freedom to do anything they want in that position that they have been given by the people. The other thing is that, and I disagree with Wakili here about government expanding liberties and so on, is that the government has absolutely no role in expanding liberties and the freedoms that the people have. Those freedoms and liberties are inherent in being a person in this space. The government is required to obey the fact that the people have those liberties and those rights and those freedoms. Government does not expand the space. Government obeys the fact that the people have that space and that they are allowed to do everything except that which is prohibited by law. So between a minister in government and the average citizen can stand in a public space in the agora and tell the minister, what you did was idiotic. It was stupid and you should not do it again. And the minister cannot retaliate. The minister cannot go and say, what you told me is wrong, because that person has way more liberties to do everything except that which is prohibited by law, and the minister can only do that which is provided for by law. So this is a mindset that we have to start acquiring as Kenyans. And when you're placed in a position of responsibility, you must acquire the mindset that, you know what, my freedoms to do everything that I wanted to do are now restricted by the position that I occupy. So that is the second thing that I thought.
And as you move on to your third point, and I'll come to you, Steve, then the extrapolation of the right to be offended and the right not to be offended.
There's no such right.
Okay. Yeah. Let me come to the point then. What then is, according to you, in a liberal setup like ours, the inherent, you have talked about rights, is morally wrong and legally wrong?
Yeah. So Wakili will tell you about the relationship between morality and legality. So what's legal, I mean, it's written in the law, this is what you should do in this circumstance, this is what you must never do, and if you do it, this is your punishment and so on. But what's moral goes beyond what's legal. So what's moral is about the values that we hold as people. We attempted as Kenyans, as you said, to write some of the broad strokes of what our values as Kenyans are in the Constitution. We attempted to, but you can never legislate morality in totality. Morality is taught at the dinner table when I am sitting with my children, with my family, and we are talking about the state of the world and the future of the world and where we came from. This is where morality is taught. And my two religious colleagues here, with apologies, I would say, you don't even need to be religious to be moral, because morality is a biological imperative. It's the reason why we are here. We are here because we share certain values, no matter what we believe. Individually. For instance, we all agree that I cannot walk into this studio and kill you. No matter whether I am Hindu, Muslim, Christian, atheist, whatever, we share that value. So, and there are many, many, many similar moral values that we share, no matter what our religious beliefs are. So you do not have to even be religious to be moral. And our attempt to put those in writing in the Constitution was a good attempt, but we should not deceive ourselves that we can actually legislate morality or put it in the Constitution and say, this is our moral values. Because we are constantly evolving, we are constantly learning new things, we are constantly encountering new problems that require those dinner table conversations that say, hey, this is not who we are, and this is not how we do things.
Okay, all right.
And that is something that Kenyans must continue to have conversations on.
All right. Steve, in the end, then, Kenya has to be a decent and tolerant society. But then how do we attain that status when our politicians are practicing the art without principles, the aspect of wealth without work? I mean, if you compare the manner in which these politicians and the political class do lay out what they own, or their wealth status when they are being vetted, you surely wonder, someone without establishing a manufacturing plant, being a billionaire because simply he was in the political class, then takes up to the podium, practices politics without principles, cannot explain where he got the wealth from. How then do we build up that society where the consumers of what you say on these podiums are children at home who you can't police all the time as a parent, then end up blaming the very same parent?
I think all of us are amenable to some authority and influence over us. And for me, as a Christian believer, I am fully aware that I subject myself to the Christian doctrinal teaching, and therefore the religious leaders have great influence on my actions and decisions and inactions. So then I would appeal to our religious leaders, our sheikhs, our priests, to upscale their level of intervention I think, yes, you could be the president, the governor, an MP, a senator, elected leader, but at the end of the day, you subject yourself to the authority and influence of the religious leaders. Because at some point, we go to church or we go to pray in the mosque. There's a sheikh there who delivers
a sermon.
There's a pastor who delivers a sermon. And I think they must reflect whether the religious teachings have an impact or influence. Because if it doesn't, then they should take remedial action. I think it's up to them, they're here, to tell us what kind of remedial action can they take. The president goes to some church, right? So who is his pastor? Ministers go to some churches or some mosques. Who are their religious leaders? Mm-hmm. Do they have influence and authority over them, yes or no? If they have ceded that influence, how can you be a religious leader when you have no influence over the people that you lead? Surely. So we start from there. That alone could have a tremendous impact in mitigating the unlimited exercise of power. The other intervention could be the family level. You have heard stories about the influence of wives in husbands' lives. Mm-hmm. I think they should also probably just make appeal to them, because there is something that a woman will tell her that I will not permit my husband to say this, or my wife to say this. So because of the way you value that family as a unit, it could have tremendous impact. And remember, in the emergence of a society, society was built from family, going outwards, growing into a community, you know, and then now this complex political setup that we have. Yeah. So if you're looking for solutions, let us look for solutions from people that have influence and authority above us. I think all of us have some, most of us subscribe to some faith or another, and those that don't subscribe to a particular faith, I said, there's the right reason. Because true law is not what is written in the Constitution. That is a very limited expression of what constitutes the full rubric of what the law is. True law is what you feel as intrinsically right. When you sit, and you know, we are told that integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. Yeah. When you sit alone, and I grew up in the village, I walked the next compound and I was given food. Ayub. The grandmothers who gave me food, potatoes and water to drink, did not have to reference to Article 43 on socioeconomic rights. They don't know what Article 43 says, but they know this child is hungry, and they know they have something, and they know their own children have no lunch. But they'll say, we will take care of that when my children come back. For now, there's a child here who is hungry, take a portion. Okay. So I think it's not true that we are all mighty and powerful and we have no influence. There are no people with influence or authority over us. I think what is true is the people, and this is a strong indictment on our religious leaders, the people that have influence and authority over us have ceded that authority. On the contrary, they have subjugated themselves to the political elite. Okay,
so how did that, because you're talking about a society that has produced, that had a strong value systems, but and largely it's the society, it's that society you have described, Steve, which has produced a majority of the current crop of the leadership we have in our country. At what point did they lose that value, and when did the erosion begin?
I am very eager to get that answer from our religious leaders we are flanked by two. And you did a good job to bring them. But for those who are atheists, who feel left out, we appeal to their good sense of judgment. I think, as I said earlier, Ayub, there is a pervasive understanding that thou shalt not kill, without reference to any religious doctrinal teaching. It's just not right in your mind that you appropriate what is not yours. So for those who are not religious, what happened to your sense of judgment? You know, to answer Prof, he raised something there. Absolutely. I have not conflated or confused the limits of state power. Government does not expand liberties in the traditional sense. But remember, this particular constitution to 2010 has some uniqueness. The Bill of Rights generally, by design, imposes a negative obligation against the state. Don't limit this unless expressly permitted by the law. But there are instances like Article 43 where it has a positive obligation, take measures.
Yeah.
So how does the government take measures to expand liberties? By asking itself, look, if we resolve the issues, because you see now this critic, the fierce criticism that government is facing probably is symptomatic of some greater underlying issues, Ayub, yeah? If you resolve those underlying issues, you say, okay, how do we broaden, employment opportunities? How do we give up, and so on and so forth? You might experience a shift. You get? But also, as a practicing advocate who litigate in this court, I can tell you, Ayub, if I have a legal problem, my first reaction is not to solve it in court. So I want to de-emphasize over reliance on the formal law. Yeah. And I want to emphasize the limits of our judicial system and processes. Okay. Because if you say, that's why I appeal to personal responsibility and accountability. Well, the Constitution says, constitutional lawyers, there's this joke among constitutional lawyers that it is only, don't try me, only the Constitution permits you to try its limits. Well, the Constitution permits you to test its limits, but you could be inconvenienced on your way to testing the limits of the Constitution. So as you test the limits of your liberties, as you expand the enjoyment of your liberties, I appeal to good sense of judgment. All right. One last point, and permit me to say this. Yeah. How do you know if you are progressing the right way? If you're a civilian or if you're a state actor. If you're a civilian, ask yourself, the kind of artistic expression that you're enjoying and celebrating under the Constitution of Kenya 2010, what would you consider the limit if you're the one in that public office, right? Okay. So that then you use that to moderate yourself. It cannot be argued with certainty and evidence that that limit is unfettered. It is fettered, but not by the state. It's fettered by our personal responsibility. If you're the other side of government, you have to ask yourself, you don't need a restless and restive society. You need a very calm environment to be able to govern. So what is it that you can do to permit, and I'm using that word liberally, Prof, because I know you are offended by it. I am. What can you do as government to ensure that the rights, because I'm substituting it, the rights that are protected by the Constitution are enjoyed to the extent possible. All right. And that when you're intervening, that intervention is absolutely necessary and cannot wait. Okay. And Sheikh Lithom and Dr. Kanga, did you drop the ball?
Okay. The role of the religion here and the religious leaders. I want to agree with everybody here. It has to begin from somewhere. And for me, I think we should stop blame games and take up responsibility. And I want to begin with ourselves as the religious leaders. We have to take up the responsibility because we are the custodians of the teachings of God. And the way I look at it, I look at the Quran as the user's manual from the Creator himself, just like we look at the user's manual from a manufacturer of a motor vehicle as, what you need to refer to when you have problems here. The Bible is the user's manual for the Christian, and we are the custodians. So I think we need now to revisit and also relook at the role of religion in society. And I want to take the blame here. I don't want to blame anybody else here. I think we have overemphasized religion for the power as a vehicle of taking us there, to that other life there. And forgotten that religion is supposed to be a vehicle to help us be good citizens in this country before we go there. And that's why some people are taken to Shakahola, because somebody emphasized that this life here is useless. I think we need another life there. So I think we need to refocus that. And that includes telling the leadership what they have to be told. And let me tell you, from my religious teachings, you're told, I know when people talk about jihad, people are scared of that word. Yet my teachings, my Quran tells me that the best jihad, form of jihad, is telling a leader the truth on their face. As a religious leader, I have that responsibility. And you, as a journalist also, you have a responsibility. Make sure, as you sit there, the power of the media that you have, can you use it responsibly? I use my position responsibly. Daktari here uses his position responsibly. The lawyer also uses his position responsibly. Each one of us should be responsible. And at the end of the day, remember, you are answerable before God. Because as you said, what is it that you do when you're just alone, when nobody is seeing you? And let me tell you, God has created us in such a way that when you do what is wrong, you will know. Because even creatures that are lower than us know. If you have a cat at home, just go, give it a piece of meat. It will eat it comfortably before you. But if it snatches the meat from your kitchen, it will run away. Why? If a cat knows what is right and what is wrong,
with
what
no
a human being that, who is intelligent. So I think we need to appeal to that. But where did the rain start beating us? There is no leader who elects themselves. We elect them. The problem begins with us. Now, we are very busy blaming people in position. But tomorrow, 2027 is coming, inshallah. The same people that we are criticizing, because of one consideration or another, will bring them back. Why can't we decide as Kenyans, bite the bullet, pull the trigger? And I want to help Dr. Atwoli here. We can use 2027 to take care of all those gray-haired people. And I'm not talking about anybody with gray hair, because mine is also gray hair. Okay? We can do that. But we keep on recycling them because of ethnic affiliation. Ni mtu wetu, huyu ni mtu wetu, ni wakati wetu wa kula nyama, and all those considerations. So we begin with the Kenyans themselves. Dear Kenyans, can we use the power of the ballot to make sure we bring in leaders who are God-fearing? A person who I tell them, if he's a Muslim, if I tell them, ittaqillah, fear God, they know what that means. If he's a Christian, you tell them, fear God, they know what that means. We can do that.
Okay.
Dr. Kanga, we can do that.
Yes.
Did we drop the bill?
The ball.
Did we drop the ball? No, we did not. What we might have missed is the balance between the three. Prof, for quality human being, he must be mentally mature, and then the body mature, and then spiritually mature. Anybody who claims to be mentally mature and there is spirituality has a problem, that person is not quality. So for proper morality, for quality morality is an outcome of the spirituality and the mental capacity and the body capacity. So how do this meet? The balance is required. So where are we? It's possible that we have emphasized so much on the mind that we lose the spirituality. And that spirituality, if it is there, then it is not right spirituality that is communicated to that particular child. And why Prof will say something like, oh, you know, you don't need spirituality to have proper value system. Yes, you need spirituality, and then you need the mind, and then you need the body to have quality morality. So did we drop the ball? No, we did not drop it. What we did, some people emphasize in a particular way. There are people who are emphasizing on too much of what I can acquire, too much of the body, too much of materialism, than having materialism accompanied by spirituality, which produces quality value system. And that might be the problem. Who to blame? We blame the professor here for emphasizing too much on I, myself, and me, and how smart he is, and me emphasizing how spirituality good I am. But we don't meet to balance. So we need to meet together and balance and make sure Kenyans come together and agree. The spiritual people, the politicians, all of us, where are we? What's the best way to go around so that we don't get into the situation where we do something, we murder somebody's child, and then we say, it's okay because that child was misbehaving. How? Okay. It's ridiculous.
Dr. Atwoli, it's welcome to you. Yeah. Is it possible to have a triple frontier that is performing at par, where the performance is commensurate or parallel, the state, religion, and parenting?
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, it's possible. And the question of did we drop the ball can be answered firstly by asking, were we holding up the ball in the beginning? In the beginning, were we holding up a ball that could be dropped? And my answer to that is that no, we were not. The foundation of the Kenyan Republic was deceitful, it was violent, It was full of acquisition, me, right from the beginning. When the Kenyan state was forged, it was forged by violence. It was forged by forcing people into a space, whether they liked it or not. And they were kept in that space, whether they liked it or not. And when the independence government came in, it inherited all the colonial structures which were extractive, which were exploitative, and which were about primitive accumulation. And the state that replaced the colonial government took on those things and changed the names. From Governor General to Prime Minister and then to President, and so on and so forth. But the structures remained the same to this day. That when I get into power, I extract, I accumulate, and I use violence to my benefit. That has not changed. And so those are the values that were infused into the Kenyan state at the beginning. And they have continued to animate the Kenyan state. And so in 2010, we made a valiant effort to change that by writing down things that we should not do. I mean, you cannot do this if you're the president. You cannot do this if you're in government. You must let people be. You cannot abduct people. You cannot restrict the rights of people just because they offend you or they annoy you and so on and so forth. We wrote that down into the Constitution because of the history of where we came from. Unfortunately, we have a constitution without constitutionalism. We have a constitution without the values of constitutionalism, so that somebody can stand up, somebody in authority can stand up and say, even though the Constitution says that, I don't have to do it. Somebody can say, even though the Constitution prohibits me from doing that, I'm going to do it anyway. Somebody can say that in Kenya today.
Because I am.
Because of where Kenya came from. Because of the history of this republic. Because of where we were forged from. And so we have to work on that constitutionalism. We have to work on the values that say, if I say I'm going to do this, I should do it. If the law requires me to do this and that, I must do it. And that is what our young protesters on the streets, this is what my children, who are Gen Z, are telling me every single day. When I sit with them at the dinner table, they tell me, Dad, you promised that you will take us to this place on the weekend because it's a holiday. What are you doing about it? And I say, yes, I will take you. And if I don't, they will sit down the next day and say, you promised to do this and you didn't do it. Because I tell them that people should keep their promises. And they're reading the law, and the law says the president should do this, the minister should do this, your member of parliament should do this. And they're watching, and the people are not doing that.
And in your view, is this generation that you have talked about and who in 2024 pointed out key governance issues, the remedy to the black colonization that you have described post-independence?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we have to start thinking about decolonization. And the decolonization begins in the mind, of course. We have to have a mindset that says, listen, why do we even have this state? We find ourselves here. What can we do with it? And the 2010 Constitution was a truly, truly huge effort in understanding who we are, where we have come from, and where we want to go as a nation, as a people. And our role today, our responsibility today in leadership and as citizens is to continue pushing that narrative, pushing the values that we sat together in 2010 and agreed that these animate Kenya today, or because what we wrote in the Constitution is not prescriptive and is not descriptive of who we are. It is aspirational. We say, this is where we want Kenya to be. This is not where Kenya is. This is not where Kenya is coming from. It is what we want Kenya to be. Okay. And so our responsibility as citizens, as leaders and so on, is to understand those aspirations and to advance them as best as we can. Yeah. And for citizens, when our leaders are not advancing those aspirations, it's our responsibility to remove them and to replace them with people who will continue to advance those aspirations.
And the beauty about one of the components of Katiba 2010 is that our electoral dates are fixed.
Yes.
Yes, Steve.
I just wanted to provide contextual clarity. The way I understand this conversation and my input to it is that this conversation is intensely extra-legal.
Yeah.
Meaning it's occurring not outside or against the law or the Constitution, but beyond the law.
Yeah.
Beyond the law. That is what extra-legal means. Beyond the law. Because the law has intrinsic limits. And I keep on cautioning Kenyans. The law is very complex. If it wasn't, you wouldn't have lawyers. And those lawyers don't agree. Because by the inbuilt design is that you do something, then the courts ask what is the rational justification. And then there's a whole debate whether this action is rational or not. And then you argue back and forth, it was not rational, it's rational. And then the court makes a determination. Meanwhile, you lose fundamental issues around that argument, which is why having a conversation that is extra-legal goes beyond the law has more benefit. Now, for me, Ayub, this is what I would consider as the pressing problem. The pressing problem in our Kenyan society, and if you can reflect on it, the emerging pattern, and it's also a global phenomenon, of moral relativism. What is right depends on the context. Now, that's a very dangerous terrain. If you leave it unchecked, that what is right depends on the context, then anything goes.
Yeah.
Anything that can't enter your imagination will happen. The citizens will do what they want. The government will react the way it wants, because there's no limit. There's no limit. And if you want to find limits in the law, then the lawyers will trap you there. Because I earn a living by practicing law. After this show, I'm in court. Right? That's why I was able to drive here. Because someone has to pay my bills as a lawyer. Now, beside what I do for bread and butter, there is an intrinsically intimate conversation I should be having with myself. And that's why I see the value in this conversation. For me, I'm not prepared to let our religious leaders off the hook. Because Kenyans are religious.
Yeah.
And I want to tap into that existing potential to be able to renew our commitment to the things we hold dear. If you're talking about the quest for revival of our Kenyan state, that conversation cannot start without a reflection of the impact and influence of our religious teaching on our lives. The other one is what lawyers call legal archiving. Legal archiving, I've been observing it keenly. There was a guy called Professor Hansongole, may God rest his soul in peace. He was a leading jurist and a scholar at the University of Pretoria, a Zambian jurist, yeah? He told me sometime back in 2016, Steve, you have a beautiful story. You are a product of the grace, kindness, and generosity of people who didn't even have an idea of what the Bill of Rights says. You are not educated by your parents. You are educated by your parents and the community.
Yeah.
As you walk to school, you drink water on the road, you are given a banana, you are given sugarcane, you share lunch. Nobody ever told those people that the Bill of Rights says so. So how can you appeal to that, what is uniquely African? South Africans call it Ubuntu. Ours, I don't know if they call it Harambe.
Utu.
Utu. What is Harambe? Utu. Ayub.
Yes.
That Utu in us, there's something inherently beautiful in us that we are suppressing instead of allowing it to blossom, to flourish, and then to project it on a bigger scale. As an election law expert, I disagree very fiercely with our religious leaders here who attempt to tell us that we can re-engineer our state through the ballot. Forget about it. The ballot in Kenya and in Africa and in the States is not the solution. Because the way people access power is spend a lot of money on election campaign because the voters at that time, because they're poor and disparate, and they have an inbuilt thought, mindset, that you'd rather elect someone who has given us something. That system doesn't generate the kind of results we want. The kind of results that we want, a revolution of the mind, a revolution of morals and ethics, will not come from the ballot.
All right.
It will come from the pulpit and our how do you call our mosques? Yes, it will come from there.
It's called the mimbar.
The mimbar, it will come from there. And then it will come from the dinner table that Prof talks about. And I think so far, he seems to, you appeal to me like someone who has done a good job in encouraging these liberties at the dinner table and to be held accountable. So his child because he has made all voices count in his house, his child is more likely to be a better citizen than a high-handed parent whose word is final. You get that? And so on and so forth.
Okay, and given what you have talked about, the idea is, Sheikh, final words to you and Dr. Kanga,
yes,
is that even in advanced democracies, there's that struggle with the people they have at the top there in terms of serving in the government. There are fears Marine Le Pen could win the elections in France next. This is a member who sits at the United Nations Security Council. The biggest economy in the world gave themselves Donald Trump again, the man who led an insurrection on Capitol. He was certified the same victory yesterday by his competitor, Kamala Harris. Morals?
Who would have thought so?
Yes.
I mean.
Yes, Sheikh, final comment, and Dr. Kanga, and then we sample the feedback.
Again, Ayub, what I want to say is this. I think listening to this conversation here, and I want to agree with the Wakili here, it is extra illegal. It is beyond the law, and that is what it's supposed to be. I think what we need to do is that each one of us should appreciate that we have a responsibility. Whatever position you hold, you have a responsibility. Play your role, guided by that conscience, what is right, what is wrong, and I'm answerable before God for this position that I'm holding. So beginning from the head of state, can you play your role as the head of state, knowing that this responsibility is delegated to you as per the Constitution? The power belongs to the people. They've given you the responsibility to manage the resources. Dear President, can you fear God in what you're doing and play your role responsibly? And when you're offended, can you abide by the rule of law when somebody does it wrong? For the youth, we want to tell them, yes, we know you have so many grievances. I agree. I have grievances also. But does the end justify the means? Do we have the liberty to insult everybody? Is that what we are told at the dinner table? That when we want to correct a person who is older than you, or a person in a position of responsibility, then you can call them names? I don't want to believe that is what you want to tell them at the dinner table. So what we need to tell them is that you have the freedom of expression, but it has limitations. And I'm sure some of the people who are my team in the Yashpal Guy team know that. What we put in that Bill of Rights, and I'm sure Dr. Baraza is watching this from the University of Nairobi, we were trying to address some of the gaps that we identified in the old Constitution. And that's why we removed the clawback clauses. Because what is happening now is that the Constitution gives you the rights, then they are clawed back. Here, somebody claws them back without caring whether they are following the law or not. Right. So we want to tell them, can you be responsible? And we should stop blaming one another. And I want to begin with you, the power of the media. Can you exercise it responsibly? Can the medics also exercise their powers in that space that they are in, including the dinner table also responsibly? The lawyers here also, let them not only be guided by the balance sheet. Can they also be moral? Don't defend a person just because they are paying you and you want to prove in court and create doubt, because I know as a criminal law, you have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. Create doubt as to whether black is black or is it white, and you get your bill. And you go out smiling, yet you know I defended a criminal. Can you also be responsible even as you get your fee, your legal fee?
Yes, Dr. Kang.
And as the religious leaders also, can we be ready to tell the truth to that tyrant leader? Thank you.
My colleague Sheikh, I agree with you, but as far as I'm concerned, number one, we need to develop a national referendum to speak openly on these issues. And I think we need to begin from where we are right now, where we need to initiate a national value system discussion so that we'll find out about what's really happening, and then be able to speak to one another from the inward part of humanity and then outside, and then be able to bring in all of us, so that we don't operate under the fear of the unknown and defend ourselves, get in a situation where you get this person that has no value system in leadership and protect his situation by doing what's happening in the country. So me as a religious leader and my colleagues and the rest of us, we need to advocate right now that quickly we come up with a value system discussion, come up with a national referendum to speak openly on this issue so that we can say no to some of this behavior style in the country, say no once and for all, and tell people this is what the law demands. Out of the law, what we have, as we said.
Thank you. Let me sample the feedback. 30 seconds here.
One thing that I would say is, one, leaders are held to a higher standard than the citizens. And it will not go away. It will not change anywhere in the world. And once you decide to get into the public sphere, into the agora and become a leader, you will be held to a higher standard than the citizen. And you should never, ever sit in a place and expect the citizen to be held to a higher standard than yourself as a leader. Second thing, the Constitution does not give us rights. Those rights are inherent. It documents our rights. So the mindset has to shift. We have these rights because we are people, because we are human, because we are Kenyan. And the Constitution does not give us those rights. The government does not give us those rights. They are inherent. The final thing, freedom of expression includes the freedom to offend. That's what we must agree. As long as we write down that people have the freedom of expression, they have the right to offend. Because anything I say might offend you.
You don't need to like it.
Yeah, anything I say might offend you. You know, I might say, you know, I'm the best looking Kenyan. And somebody who thinks he's the best-looking Kenyan looks at me and says, I'm offended because I'm the best-looking Kenyan. So the freedom of expression includes the freedom to offend. And if somebody offends you, you're not necessarily looking for legal remedies. You might want to go and sit down with them over tea and say, hey, by the way, that thing you said, Bwana, it offended me. And they say, okay, I'll not say that anymore. But you should not sit in a place and say, you have no right to offend me. Because I do not know what will offend you.
Yes. Yes, Steve, before you sample the feedback, yes.
No, I'm fine. I think we're in agreement. We deepen the conversation on ethical and moral commitment to our Kenyan fabric. That's fine.
Thank you. Satisfied. So let's sample the feedback and then we finish up. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Here is what you are saying on X. Mr. Bride 77 says, let's ask ourselves, are we not the role models? Is it morally right for the president to lie and lie to Kenyans amid massive corruption and crimes committed against the people? Bob Otieno says the national value was lost when we promulgated the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which gave us the rights of freedoms of speech. Look at Uganda and Rwanda. The happenings in Kenya are history to them. Frank Orinda says safety is a basic right, not a privilege. The government and security agencies must prioritize protecting citizens. They can't go on absolving themselves, yet people are disappearing in unclear circumstances. Some tortured and threatened. The IG should take responsibility. And those are just but the few that you have sent on X, and many thanks for your company here on the broadcast. Sheikh Ibrahim Lithome is a Muslim scholar. Thanks for your time. Steve Ogola, an advocate of the High Court. Dr. Lukoya Twoli is Dean of the Medical College, East Africa at the Aga Khan University. And Dr. Alphonse Kanga is the Regional Chair, the National Council, Churches of Kenya, Nairobi. Your time is all appreciated, gentlemen. Many thanks for the lovely discussion, and we hope to see you some other time again here on the broadcast. Thanks to you too. Up next is Health and Lifestyle with Safin Achieng Oma. Trevor will be here tomorrow morning on Thursday on the State of the Nation. Till then, good morning.